My name is Natalie Reed. I'm 39. Last Thanksgiving, my mother set one extra chair at our family table for my husband's pregnant girlfriend. She touched the chair back and said, "Don't make this about your little marriage." My sister Beth passed the gravy. My husband, Mark, kept his eyes on his plate. I turned the carving knife back toward the turkey and kept my voice even. But here's what my mother didn't know. The woman in that chair had never been told who kept the lake house in my mother's name. That is the reason I'm sitting here telling you this, instead of cleaning up another family secret for them. If you have ever been told to stay quiet so someone else can look decent, stay with me. And if you believe a woman does not have to scream to protect her own dignity, go ahead and like this story and subscribe. Let me take you back to the first bill my mother asked me to handle just this once. It was 3 months after my father died. I was standing at the kitchen counter in the lake house, still wearing my work blouse, because I had driven straight there after a 10-hour day. My mother, Diane, had already made coffee. She did that when she wanted something. She slid a white envelope across the counter and tapped it with one fingernail. "Just handle this one," she said. The envelope was thin. A problem can look small when someone else has already chosen your hands for it. I called the repair company from my car. I paid the balance before I drove home. I told myself my mother had just buried her husband, and grief made people bad at ordinary tasks. That was a kind explanation. It kept me useful. The lake house sat 40 minutes outside Columbus, on a narrow road where every mailbox leaned a little from winter salt. My father had bought it when Beth and I were children, back when the place needed more work than money. He fixed the porch himself. He replaced the dock twice. He kept a red ledger in the kitchen drawer, the kind with a cloth spine and squared paper inside. Every repair went in there, every tax bill, every strange noise the furnace made in March. Dad was not sentimental out loud. He showed love by keeping things from falling apart. My mother showed love when people were watching. Beth, my older sister, learned from her. At family dinners, Beth carried serving dishes like she was walking through a photograph. She remembered flowers. She remembered matching napkins. She remembered which aunt liked iced tea without lemon. I remembered when the insurance premium was due, and which plumber still answered the phone after 6. In my family, responsibility was only visible after someone wanted to use it. 2 weeks after that first envelope, Beth posted a picture from the lake house porch. She wore my father's old flannel over a sundress and wrote, "Keeping Dad's happy place alive." The comments filled with little hearts. I had paid the furnace bill 3 days before. I liked the picture anyway. By spring, the bills stopped arriving as favors. Diane forwarded them to me with no greeting. Property insurance. A dock inspection. A late fee she called a mistake, even though the notice said third reminder in bold print. She did not say thank you every time. She did not need to. In her mind, the first yes had become a job description. Beth called one Saturday while I was sorting receipts on my bedroom floor. "You're just better at this stuff," she said. "This stuff has dollar signs on it," I said. She laughed softly. "See? That's what I mean." I would get overwhelmed. There it was. A compliment with a hook in it. Mark heard that call. He was in the doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. Back then, I still thought his silence meant sympathy. He set one mug beside me and said, "Your family leans on you because you're steady." It sounded kind. Now I know steady is a word people use when they like the bridge, but never think about the weight on it. The next Thanksgiving after Dad died, Mark arrived at my mother's house with white roses. Diane held them against her chest and said, "Now this is what a son-in-law is supposed to do." Beth smiled at me over the mashed potatoes like I should be grateful my husband had made such a good impression. That same week, I had paid the lake house insurance. I had the confirmation email on my phone. I did not say that at the table. Then Mark became everyone's favorite helper. He changed a porch bulb one weekend. Diane told the story for a month. He carried a heavy cooler down to the dock. Beth took a picture of him from behind and called it "Real Family Showing Up." He drove my mother to one appointment and returned with a pie from the bakery, and my mother told 3 neighbors he was the reason she was managing. I kept paying the quiet things, the big things. The things nobody could hold in a photograph. That summer, the first strange message lit up Mark's phone while we were watching television. I did not pick it up. I only saw the name slide across the screen and disappear under his palm. He stood too fast. Work, he said. Mark did not work nights. I let that fact sit beside me on the couch. 2 months later, Beth mentioned a restaurant Mark had never taken me to. Mark said the salmon there was dry, she said, rinsing wine glasses in my mother's kitchen. I looked at her. When did he go there? The glass slipped a little in her hand. Not enough to break. Enough to tell me something had almost fallen. Oh, she said. I must have mixed it up. Beth did not mix things up. Beth corrected people who folded napkins the wrong way. That was the first time I knew my sister was not only watching something happen, she was helping it stay covered. I asked my mother about Mark a week later. I drove to the lake house after work and found Diane labeling plastic bins in the laundry room. She had written Dad's sweaters on one lid, even though she had given most of them away without asking me. Mom, I said, has Mark said anything to you? She did not ask what I meant. That was the answer before the answer. She pulled another label from the sheet and pressed it onto a bin. Natalie, don't start looking for problems. I said, I'm asking if you know something. She sighed, as if I had handed her another bill. Just handle this one, she said. The words landed differently that time. She was not asking me to pay a repairman, she was asking me to manage the feeling of being betrayed so she would not have to change her plans. I went home with no confession. I also went home with no doubt. That night I opened Dad's red ledger on my kitchen table. The cloth spine had softened at the corners. His handwriting filled the first half in dark blue ink, square and careful. Roof patch, June. Dock boards, July. Taxes paid, November. After his last entry, mine began. Furnace balance, insurance, dock inspection, late fee, property tax. At the bottom of the page, I wrote one line that was not a bill. Asked Mom if she knew. She looked away. I sat with the pen in my hand for a long time after that. Not because I did not know what the line meant. Because I did. By the second year after Dad died, the lake house had stopped being a memory and started becoming a bill with a roof on it. Diane still called it your father's place when she wanted me tender. She called it my house when she wanted control. Beth called it the lake when she wanted a pretty background for her life. Mark called it a family asset once, and I remember looking at him across the kitchen because that was not a husband's phrase. That was a man measuring exits. The payments were no longer small. $3,200 a month left my account for Diane's mortgage support and maintenance fund. That was the number we had agreed to after she cried at my dining room table and said selling the place would kill her. I did not believe houses could kill people. I did believe losing Dad had hollowed her out in ways I could not fix. So I signed the 2-page support agreement. It said I would help as long as the house remained part of the family, and as long as I was not being shut out of decisions about it. Diane signed it with a blue pen and a wet tissue in her other hand. Beth witnessed it. Mark brought the pen. I should have noticed that. The ledger stayed with me after that. Dad had given it to me 2 weeks before he died, while he was still clear enough to know which daughter would keep track. You notice what keeps a place standing, he told me. I thought he meant gutters and taxes. He meant more than that. The fall before the Thanksgiving dinner, the lie stopped being soft around the edges. Mark missed 2 nights at home, and came back with a story that had too many clean corners. Diane stopped asking when I was coming to Sunday lunch, and started asking if I had thought about being fair to Mark. Beth told me divorce made people say things they could never take back, which was interesting because I had not said the word divorce yet. Everyone else seemed to know which room we were in, before I had been invited through the door. Then Diane called me on a Tuesday morning. I'm hosting Thanksgiving, she said. You host every year. This one needs to be calm. Calm meant I should absorb the blow quietly. Calm meant Beth would manage the seating cards. Calm meant Mark would look wounded if I asked a direct question. I said, "What are you asking me not to do?" She paused. "I'm asking you to remember that family is bigger than one marriage." There it was. The frame. My marriage was small. The lake house was big. My silence was the price of keeping both. 3 days later, Beth texted me a photo of the Thanksgiving table. She said it was to avoid confusion. There were place cards in little brass holders. Diane at one end, Beth and her husband on one side, Mark near the middle. My card was not beside him. The chair beside Diane was my father's old chair, the one with the nick in the right arm where he had dropped a screwdriver while fixing a window latch. There was a blank card on the plate. Not empty. Blank. A person with a hidden name is not the same as no person at all. I zoomed in until the screen blurred. Then I put the phone down and opened the red ledger. For the first time, I was not looking at what I had paid. I was looking at what they thought those payments had bought. The next morning, I stopped guessing. I called in sick. I did not sound sick. That helped. People trust a calm voice, even when the calm is only tape over a cracked window. I made coffee. I cleared my kitchen table. I took out Dad's red ledger, my bank statements, Diane's signed support agreement, and every receipt I had saved in a blue folder Mark used to call your little museum of proof. He had meant it as teasing. It was not teasing anymore. The first number I wrote down was $3,200 a month. I circled it once. Then I wrote the tax amount under it. $18,740 due before the end of the year. The agreement was plain. It said I would help my mother keep the lake house as long as the house remained a family home, and as long as I was not shut out of major decisions about it. Beth had signed as witness. Mark had handed Diane the pen. I sat there longer on that detail than I wanted to. Mark had not been a bystander. He had watched me build the bridge he was now using to carry another woman across. I did not call him. I did not call Beth. I did not call my mother and give her a fresh chance to call me dramatic. I started with the bank, then the insurance company, then the county tax office. I asked for copies. I asked for dates. I asked for confirmation emails instead of phone summaries. Every time someone said, "Do you need anything else?" I said, "Yes. Please send that in writing." There is a kind of anger that wants a witness. Mine wanted a timestamp. By noon I had 3 stacks on the table. One showed what I had paid. One showed what Diane had signed. One showed what Mark had been pretending to carry. The third stack was the thinnest. That told me plenty. Around 2 o'clock, Mara texted me. I had never met her. I knew her name because I had seen it flash across Mark's phone, and because Beth had almost dropped a wine glass when she said the restaurant where Mark liked the salmon. Still, seeing the name on my own screen made the air in my kitchen change. "Hi, Natalie. I know this is awkward, but Mark said everyone is trying to make Thursday peaceful. I hope we can be kind." I stared at the word kind until the screen dimmed. I did not throw the phone. I did not type the sentence that came to mind first. That sentence would have felt good for 12 seconds and cost me the room on Thursday. So I answered one thing. "What did Mark tell you I know?" The reply did not come right away. I watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. "He said you and he have been separated emotionally for years. He said your family knows. He said the house situation is almost settled." I read it once standing up. I read it again sitting down. Not only the affair, not only the baby. A whole life had been explained around me while I was still standing in it. I placed my phone beside the red ledger. I took a screenshot. I saved it in the same folder as the bank emails. Then I wrote one sentence in Dad's ledger. "Mara thinks I walked away." I did not know yet whether Mara was cruel, foolish, or simply well-informed by a liar. That mattered. It did not matter enough for me to make her the target. My target was the story. That afternoon, Mark came home early. He walked into the kitchen and stopped when he saw the papers. His eyes moved over the table too quickly. A guilty person does not always look scared. Sometimes he looks busy, like he has just remembered an errand in another room. "What's all this?" he said. "House papers." "My God, Natalie." He put his keys down, not in the bowl, beside it, a small miss. His hand was not as steady as his voice. "We should talk after Thanksgiving," he said, "like adults. We can talk now." He shook his head, almost sadly. He had practiced that face. "Your mother is fragile. I don't want this to become a scene." My mother's fragility had become a curtain. Everyone who wanted to hide something was standing behind it. "What do you want me to sign?" I asked. He blinked once. "Who said anything about signing?" "You did. Not with that word." He leaned on the counter. "There are a few things that would make the transition clean. That's all." Transition. Clean. People love clean words for dirty work. I looked at him until he looked away. "Clean for who?" I asked. "For everyone," he said. "For you too. So nobody can say later that you were pushed into anything." That sentence was too careful to be comfort. The envelope was supposed to make it look like I had stepped away from the marriage, from the house, and from the family story by choice. I did not ask him to explain. He would only explain in a shape that made him look tired and me look sharp. Instead, I slid the bank statements into the blue folder and closed it. Mark watched the folder disappear. That was the first time I saw him understand that I was not just hurt, I was organized. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Beth texted me a picture of the table again. This time the blank card had a name on it. Mara. The letters were written in Beth's careful looping hand. The card sat on Dad's old chair, tucked into a brass holder shaped like a leaf. My card was 3 seats away from Mark, between an uncle who repeated stories and a cousin who sold vitamins on social media. Beth added one line. Please be civil. I looked at the photo until the anger became useful. The chair was not random. Diane had other chairs. Folding chairs in the pantry, 2 stools by the island, a bench near the mudroom. She had chosen Dad's chair because she wanted the picture to say Mara was not a guest. Mara was being placed. I saved the photo. Then I called Beth. She answered on the second ring. I'm at the store. Move the chair. Silence. Then the sound of a cartwheel clicking over tile. Natalie, don't start. Move Dad's chair. It's just a chair. No, it isn't. She lowered her voice. Mom can't lose the house over your feelings. She said it fast. Too fast. I stood very still in my kitchen. There are sentences that open a locked door by accident. Beth had just opened one. So that's what this is, I said. She did not answer. Beth. I have to go. The call ended. I put the phone down beside the red ledger and wrote another line. Beth said the house out loud. After that, I stopped looking for the moral reason. There was a practical one. Diane wanted the house. Beth wanted Diane stable enough to not become her problem. Mark wanted to look like a generous man while letting me pay for the stage he stood on. Mara had been told Mark was helping rescue the lake house. I was the only person in the story doing the rescuing, which made me the one everyone needed quiet. That made the next step simple. Not easy. Simple. I called Karen Holt, the woman who had helped us when Diane signed the support agreement. I did not plan to make her a character in my family mess. I only needed one plain answer. If I stop voluntary support, I said, how do I make sure nobody says later that I never told them? Karen paused. I heard paper move near her phone. You put it in writing, she said. And if it involves the family agreement, you make sure the other party receives it in a way that can be confirmed. Does a speakerphone call count if you acknowledge receipt? It can, she said carefully. I can acknowledge receiving notice. I can't referee Thanksgiving. I'm not asking you to. She laughed once very quietly. I liked her for that. Karen gave me the office holiday hours. They were short. She would be available late Thanksgiving afternoon for urgent family property notices because, as she put it, people make terrible decisions when there is pie in the room. That was the only joke I heard all week that did not feel aimed at me. I printed the notice. It was 1 page. No threats. No accusations. It said I was ending the monthly support under the terms Diane had signed. It said I would pay no further mortgage support, tax support, insurance support, or maintenance support for the lake house after that date. It said any claim that Mark had been the financial support for the house was false. I read it aloud in my kitchen. My voice did not shake. Then I folded it into the blue folder with the 3 stacks and Dad's red ledger. The folder was getting heavy. Good. On Wednesday night, Mark tried again. He came into the bedroom while I was packing the pie dish Diane had asked me to bring. Not the turkey, not the stuffing. A pie. Something sweet enough to carry through the door, and harmless enough to put at the end of the table. Tomorrow can be decent, he said. I kept wrapping foil over the dish. For who? For everyone. That word had gotten crowded lately. He sat on the edge of the bed. Mara is nervous. I pressed the foil down around the rim. I imagine she is. She doesn't deserve to be attacked. I looked at him then. Neither did I. His face tightened. Not with guilt, with annoyance that I had chosen the wrong line in the script. He stood. I'm trying to do this respectfully. No, I said. You're trying to do it with witnesses. He left the room. I put the pie in the refrigerator. Then I checked the blue folder again. Ledger. Agreement. Bank confirmations. Tax notice. Mara's message. Photo of the chair. Printed notice. 7 pieces. 1 table. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before my alarm. I dressed in a navy sweater because it did not show much if my hands shook. Then I stood in my kitchen and looked at the pie, the folder, and my keys. For a moment, I wanted to stay home. Not because I was afraid of them. Because I was tired of becoming brave on schedule. My phone buzzed. It was Mara. I don't want to hurt you. Mark said you understood more than you were saying. Is that true? That was the first honest question anyone in that circle had asked me in months. I did not explain. Not yet. I typed back. Ask him who paid the lake house bills this year. The message marked delivered. No reply came. It was not enough to win. It was enough to walk in without feeling blind. I sat in my car for 1 full minute. The pie was on the passenger seat. The blue folder was under it, because I had learned that sweet things can hide sharp ones if you stack them carefully enough. Through the windshield, my mother's front windows looked warm. That was the trick of houses at Thanksgiving. From the street, every room looks like it is holding love. My phone was face up in the cup holder. Mara had not answered my last message. Ask him who paid the lake house bills this year. No dots, no apology, no new version of the story, just delivered. That small silence steadied me more than any speech could have. Before I opened the car door, I want to say this. If you have ever had to walk into a room where everyone had already been told who you were supposed to be, leave the word boundary in the comments. Not for me. For the part of you that still knows the truth even when the whole table is arranged against it. What happened next was not loud at first. I still had to carry a pie into my mother's house like a polite daughter. Diane opened the door before I knocked. That was how I knew she had been watching the driveway. She wore a cream sweater and the pearl earrings Dad bought her for their 30th anniversary. She looked past my shoulder first, as if she expected me to bring a storm with me and wanted to see its size. You made it, she said. I said I would. Her eyes dropped to the pie, then to my other hand. What's that? A folder. For Thanksgiving? For after dinner? Her mouth tightened. Just a little. Then she smiled the way she smiled for neighbors. Well, she said, let's have a nice day. Nice was another crowded word. I stepped inside. The house smelled like turkey, sage, and furniture polish. Beth was in the dining room adjusting place, cards that did not need adjusting. Mark stood near the fireplace with a glass of water he had not drunk from. He looked at me, then at the folder, then away. Mara was not there yet. For 10 minutes, everyone behaved like people in a commercial for a family nobody had ever met. Diane told me the green beans were in the oven. Beth asked if traffic was bad. Mark offered to take my coat. I kept the folder tucked under my arm and handed him only the coat. The table was already set. Dad's chair was beside my mother. The place card said Mara. I saw the nick in the right arm of the chair. I saw the little brass holder. I saw the space where my father's elbow used to rest when he carved the turkey and pretended not to listen to Beth and me argue over the last roll. I did not touch the chair. I wanted to. I wanted to move it back 3 inches. Just enough to make the room admit what it was doing. Instead, I carried the pie to the counter and put it down. The blue folder came with me. Diane noticed. Of course she noticed. Beth came up beside me and kept her voice low. Please don't do this today. Do what? Make everybody uncomfortable. I looked at her hands. She had written the place cards herself. Her thumb had a tiny line of black ink near the nail. You wrote her name on Dad's chair, I said. Beth's face changed, but not enough for anyone else to catch. It's just seating. No, I said. It's a sentence. She looked toward the hallway. Natalie. That was all she had. My name? Said like a warning label. The doorbell rang. Diane moved faster than she needed to. Mara came in wearing a dark green dress and a coat she had not buttoned all the way. Pregnancy had changed the way she stood. One hand rested near her middle before she seemed to notice and drop it. She looked younger than I expected. Not young enough to excuse the damage. Young enough to remind me that Mark had built her a room inside a lie and called it a future. Diane hugged her. Beth hugged her. Mark kissed her cheek. He did not look at me when he did it. That was kind of him, I suppose. A man should only ask one room to swallow so much at once. Mara's eyes found mine. Hi, Natalie, she said. Hi, Mara. No one fainted. No plates cracked. The house kept standing. That is the thing about humiliation. The room usually survives it better than the person inside it. Diane clapped her hands once. All right, Food before everything gets cold. Everything was already cold where it mattered. We sat down. Diane took her place at the head of the table. Mara sat beside her in Dad's chair. Mark sat 2 chairs away from me, close enough to perform regret, and far enough to avoid my knee under the table. Beth sat across from me with her phone face down beside her plate. The folder rested on my lap. For the first few minutes, the table worked hard. Forks moved. Rolls passed. Someone mentioned football. An uncle asked Mark about work. Mark answered in a calm, generous voice, the one he used when he wanted people to think he had been patient for a very long time. Mara kept glancing at him. That told me she had asked him my question. It also told me he had not answered well. Diane poured gravy over her turkey and began the speech I knew was coming. I just want to say how grateful I am, she said, that we can all be together and be mature. Beth nodded too quickly. Diane went on. Families change. Good people adjust. We don't punish each other for needing a different life. A different life. Mark lowered his eyes. Mara stared at her plate. I put my fork down. Diane looked pleased with herself. She thought silence meant the room belonged to her. Then Mark reached under his chair and pulled out a manila envelope. Not after dinner. Not in private. At the table. He laid it beside my plate like he was offering me a napkin. We do need to talk through a few practical things, he said. Beth looked at the envelope. Diane looked at me. Mara looked at Mark. That was the first crack. I did not touch the envelope. What is it? I asked. Mark gave me the tired smile. Just some paperwork to make the transition clean. There were those words again. Transition. Clean. I almost admired the confidence. Almost. Diane folded her hands on the table. Natalie, everyone here cares about you. But dragging this out helps no one. I looked at the clock above the kitchen doorway. Karen Holt's office would close in less than an hour. The tax bill was due before the end of the year. The envelope was on my right. Dad's chair was on my left, filled by a woman who had been told I had already stepped aside. The room had become exactly what they wanted. Public enough to pressure me. Family enough to shame me. Timed enough to rush me. That was their mistake. A trap only works if the person inside it does not recognize the shape. I looked at Mark. Did you tell her who pays for this house? His face did not move. Beth inhaled through her nose. Diane's fork stopped halfway to her plate. Mara turned toward Mark with the slow care of a person who has just heard a door open in a hallway she thought was empty. Mark set his hand on the envelope. This is not the time. It seems like the time, I said. Natalie, Diane said. I kept my eyes on Mark. Did you tell her? He gave a small laugh. Your mother and I have discussed the house. This is complicated. It isn't. Mara's voice came out quiet. Mark? He looked at her then, not at me, at her. That mattered. He still thought she was the person he needed to manage. Diane's face hardened. Don't make this about your little marriage, she said. There it was. The same sentence from the doorway of my humiliation, now placed in front of the entire table like a centerpiece. I waited one beat. Not for drama. For steadiness. Then I lifted the pie off my lap and set it on the sideboard. I placed the blue folder on the table where the pie would have gone. Beth's eyes followed it. Mark's hand tightened on his envelope. Diane sat back as if distance could protect her from paper. I opened the folder. I did not pull out the bank statements first. I did not pull out the notice. I pulled out Dad's red ledger. The cloth spine was faded. The corners were soft. The book looked too ordinary to frighten anyone who did not know what ordinary things can hold. I placed it in front of Mara. Not Mark. Not Diane. Mara. Before you sign anything with him, I said, you should know what table you're sitting at. Mara looked at the ledger like I had handed her something alive. She did not open it at first. Her fingertips rested on the cloth spine. The room waited for me to explain. And that was exactly why I did not. Explanation would have given Mark room to interrupt. It would have given Diane room to smooth the edges. So I kept my hands flat on the table and let the book sit there. Mara opened the cover. Dad's handwriting was on the first page. She looked up once. Not at Mark. At me. My father kept that book, I said. Every bill for the lake house went in there. After he died, I kept it going. Diane made a small sound. It was not a word. It was the sound of a woman realizing the thing on the table had a memory longer than hers. Mara turned the first few pages slowly. Roof patch. dockboards, furnace, taxes. Then my handwriting began. The ink changed. The pattern did not. I slid the first receipt beside the ledger. Last month, I said. Then the second. Insurance. Then the third. County tax notice. I did not stack them dramatically. I put them down like groceries, one after another. Ordinary paper, ordinary numbers, ordinary proof of an extraordinary lie. Mara's face changed on the third receipt. Her mouth opened a little, then closed. Her hand moved to her stomach and stayed there. Mark leaned forward. This is not what it looks like. Beth's fork touched her plate with a hard little click. Diane reached for her water glass. The bottom of it hit the table twice before she got it still. Mara looked at Mark. You told me you were helping your mother-in-law keep this house. Mark swallowed. The whole table saw it. That mattered more than any answer. I gave him one chance. Only one. Did you pay any of these? I asked. He looked at the receipts. He looked at Diane. He looked back at me. Natalie, we all contribute in different ways. It was a beautiful sentence if you did not care whether it meant anything. Mara pushed his envelope away from her plate. Diane sat straighter. This is family business. No, Mara said. Her voice was soft, but it cut clean. Then she looked at me. He told me you had already walked away. There was the human part of it. Not the money. Not the house. The story. Mark had not only taken another woman into his life. He had built that life on a version of me that made my absence convenient. I nodded once. I know. Diane turned toward Mara. You don't understand the history here. Mara's eyes stayed on the ledger. I understand the names. That was the first small break in the room. Beth picked up her phone, then set it down again. She had been recording earlier. I had seen the camera angle. Now she seemed unsure whether proof was still her friend. I opened the blue folder again. This is the paper Mom signed when I agreed to support the house, I said. I placed it beside the ledger. Beth's signature sat at the bottom. Mark's handwriting was on the sticky note still attached to the back, the one he had used when he told Diane where to sign. Beth saw her name first. Her shoulders lowered by an inch. Diane did not look at the agreement. She looked at the people looking at the agreement. That was my mother's gift. She could locate a threat by watching where other people's eyes went. I helped because Dad loved this house, I said. I helped because Mom said selling it would break her. I helped because I thought I was keeping a family place standing. I stopped there. Everyone at that table could see what they had turned it into. The answer was sitting in Dad's chair. Mara moved then. Slowly she pushed the chair back. The legs scraped the floor. It was not loud, but it landed harder than shouting. She stood up from my father's chair. Diane reached toward her. Mara, please. Mara stepped aside. No, she said. I'm not sitting there. That was the moment my mother understood. Not when she saw the receipts. Not when Mark failed to answer. When the woman she had placed in that chair refused to keep it. Diane's lips parted. Nothing came out. I took my phone from my pocket and set it in the center of the table. I sent notice before I came, I said. Karen Holt is available to confirm she received it. Diane's face hardened. You called someone on Thanksgiving? You invited my husband's pregnant girlfriend to Thanksgiving. No one corrected me. I tapped the number, Karen answered on the second ring. Her voice filled the table, clear and tired in the way working women sound when a holiday has not protected them from other people's choices. Natalie, she said. I received your written notice. Can you confirm what it says? Yes. You are ending voluntary financial support for the lake house under the Family Support Agreement, effective today. I have time-stamped receipt of the notice. Diane grabbed the edge of her napkin. Karen continued. The monthly support, property tax support, insurance support, and maintenance support from you will stop after today. Any further payment arrangements will need to be made by Diane Reed directly. There it was. Not the first truth. The lock. Diane's hand went flat on the table. Beth stared at the leaf-shaped place card holder, as if it might tell her what to do next. Mark reached for his manila envelope, but Mara put her palm over it. Don't, she said. Karen spoke once more. And Natalie, for clarity, any document requiring your release or signature has no effect unless you sign it voluntarily. I'm not signing it, I said. Then there is nothing to process from that envelope. Mark's face went pale in a way I had never seen before. It was not sadness. It was math arriving late. I thanked Karen and ended the call. For a few seconds, nobody reached for food. An uncle at the far end set his roll back on his bread plate without taking a bite. Beth's husband pulled his chair in, then stopped halfway. Mara stood beside Dad's chair with one hand on the back of another chair, as if she needed furniture to remind her the floor was still under her. Diane finally found her voice. "You would let me lose your father's house?" I looked at the ledger. That question was the last costume she had. "No," I said. "I paid to keep Dad's house in the family. You used it to move me out of one." Mark made a sharp sound. "Natalie, that is not fair." I turned to him. "No," I said. Fair would have been telling her the truth before she sat down. Mara looked at him then. She did not look wounded in the dramatic way people expect. She looked suddenly older. That was worse. A lie had taken months from her face in one breath. Diane tried one more time. "This was never about money." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because for once, my mother had told the truth by accident. "You're right," I said. It was about the chair. The room followed my eyes. Dad's chair stood empty beside my mother. The place card with Mara's name was still in front of it. Beth had written it beautifully. The ink had a little shine under the dining room light. I picked up the card. I did not tear it. I did not crumple it. I placed it beside Mark's envelope. Then I closed Dad's ledger. That sound was small. It ended more than dinner. Diane stared at the closed cover. Her eyes had gone shiny, but no tears fell. Tears would have helped her. She knew that. Maybe that was why they did not come. For the first time in my adult life, my mother looked at me without a task in her eyes. She saw the daughter, after the usefulness had been removed. It was too late to be a beginning. Mara picked up her coat from the back of the chair where Mark had hung it for her. She did not let him help. "Take me home," she said to him. He stood too fast. His knee hit the table. A spoon jumped against a plate. Nobody laughed. He looked at me, waiting for something. Anger, maybe. A plea. A sentence he could use later. I gave him none of those. I put the ledger back into the blue folder. Then I looked at my mother. "I am not paying to be replaced." I said it once. That was all it needed. I picked up my coat from the hallway. I left the pie on the sideboard. They had a long evening ahead, and none of it was going to taste good. I did not drive home right away. I sat in my car at the end of my mother's street and let the heater run. The pie dish was no longer beside me. The blue folder was. That felt like a trade I understood. My phone buzzed before I reached the main road. It was Mark. Then Beth. Then Mark again. I turned the phone face down. For the first time in years, a family emergency did not become my assignment just because my name appeared on a screen. By Monday morning, the calls had changed shape. Mark stopped leaving messages. Beth sent one long text that began with, "I hope you're proud of yourself," which told me she was not ready to be honest yet. Diane left one voicemail. I listened to the first 10 seconds. "Natalie, I didn't know what else to do." I deleted it, not because it did not matter. Because it was not an apology. It was a receipt for the same thinking that had put Mara in my father's chair. The first visible change came at the end of the month. No transfer left my account. No automatic payment went out under Diane's name. The number 3,200 stayed where it belonged. With me, it looked almost boring on the banking screen. One scheduled payment, canceled. One line gone. No thunder, no music, just money that no longer walked out of my life, wearing the costume of love. 2 weeks later, the county tax notice came to Diane instead of me. She called 3 times that day. I answered once. "You can't expect me to manage this alone," she said. "I expect you to manage the house you chose over me. That is not fair." "I know," I said. "I learned unfair in that house." She went quiet. I could hear a cabinet door close on her end. Then she said, softer, "Your father would hate this." That one reached me. It was meant to. I looked at Dad's red ledger on my kitchen table. The cloth spine had a pale line where my thumb had rubbed it for years. "No," I said. "Dad hated waste. He hated lies more." I hung up before she could turn him into another bill. The practical pieces landed one by one after that. The insurance renewal went unpaid for 6 days. The dock company sent Diane a notice instead of calling me. A neighbor shoveled the front walk and texted Beth, not me, when nobody mailed him a check. For years, those little emergencies had found my phone by instinct. Now they found the people who had pretended the work happened by weather. Beth called once after the neighbor texted her. "Mom is overwhelmed," she said. "Then she needs help from the people she protected," I said. Beth had no answer ready. That was rare enough to count as weather. By spring, the lake house went on the market. Beth did not tell me. A neighbor did. She called because she thought I might want one last look before strangers walked through with muddy shoes and opinions about the kitchen cabinets. I almost said no. Then I went. Diane was not there when I arrived. Beth had left a key under the frog statue by the porch. I walked through alone. The rooms looked smaller without everybody's stories fighting for space. The kitchen drawer where Dad had kept the ledger was empty. The nick in the arm of his chair was still there, but the chair had been pushed against the wall with 2 lamps and a box of mismatched frames. I touched the nick once. Then I let it go. I did not take the chair. I did not take dishes. I did not take anything that would make my apartment a storage unit for a life that had used me up. I took one photograph from the mantel. Dad on the porch in a faded baseball cap, one hand on the railing he had sanded himself. He was squinting into the sun like the world had asked him a question, and he was not interested in pretending. That was enough. Mark's life did not become neat after that. Lies rarely fold back into a drawer. Mara did not move in with him. She sent me one message in January. "You didn't owe me kindness, but you gave me the truth. Thank you." I read it twice. I did not make her my friend. I did not make her my enemy. She was a woman who had been handed a story with my name scraped off it. When she saw the scrape marks, she stood up. That mattered. Mark tried to meet for coffee. I said no. He asked if we could close things with grace. I told him grace did not require a table, and closure did not require me to sit across from him while he practiced sounding sorry. The divorce moved forward. He did not fight as hard as I expected. Once money and admiration left the room, Mark lost interest in speeches. Beth returned her key to my apartment by mail. She wrapped it in a napkin from a restaurant we used to go to after Christmas shopping. No note. Just the key. Half apology, half performance. I put the key in a drawer and did not answer what had not been asked. Diane moved into a smaller townhouse near Beth by early summer. I found out from a change of address card printed in blue script. She wrote one sentence by hand at the bottom. "I miss how things were." I stood at my kitchen counter with that card in my hand and felt something loosen. Not soften. Loosen. There is a difference. Softening would have meant I was ready to carry her again. Loosening meant I could set down the part of me still waiting for her to become the mother who opened the door for me first. I called her that night. She answered on the first ring. "I got your card," I said. "I meant it. I believe you miss how things were." She breathed in. "Natalie. But how things were made me useful and small. I'm not going back to that." She cried then. Quietly. I did not stop her. I also did not rescue her from the sound. When she said she was sorry, I heard it. I accepted that it had cost her something to say it. I did not let it buy back my old job. "If we talk," I said, "it starts with the truth. Not a bill. Not a crisis. Not Mark. Not the house." "I don't know how to do that," she said. I know. That was the kindest thing I could tell her. The first dinner I hosted after that was smaller. No place cards. No speech. No one assigned themselves the role of mature person while asking me to bleed quietly under the table. I made turkey breast in my apartment oven and burned the first batch of rolls. 2 friends came over with cranberry sauce and flowers from a grocery store bucket. We ate at a round table that barely fit 4 plates. Nobody sat in my father's chair. Nobody needed to. After dinner, I opened Dad's red ledger. I placed the porch photograph inside the back cover, behind the last page of my handwriting. I did not add another payment. I did not add another note about my mother looking away. I just slid the photograph in and closed the book. For the first time, the ledger felt like memory again, not evidence. A boundary is not revenge. It is the place where a lie stops using your hands. Real family is not the person who saves you a chair after they have spent years charging you rent on your own dignity. Real family is the person who notices when your hands are full and does not add another plate. It is the person who tells the truth before the room makes it profitable to lie. That is the family I keep now. That's my story. 1 Thanksgiving table, 1 old chair, 1 red ledger, $3,200 a month I will never pay again. If you are listening to this while carrying a bill, a secret, or a silence that never should have been handed to you, please hear me. Love does not require you to finance your own erasure. You are allowed to stop paying in money, in time, or in pieces of yourself. Share this with someone who needs permission to put the folder down. And tell me in the comments, what bill did you finally stop paying money, time, or silence? If you want more stories about women who win with truth instead of screaming, subscribe. My name is Natalie Reed. I am 39 years old, and I no longer pay to be replaced.